We are
Didi
and Arma, and in our daily lives we support people on the path of self-liberation. We teach time-tested energy skills like Qigong, Tai Chi, internal alchemy, traditional nutrition and meditation.
We help people release stagnation, build energy, and become aligned with themselves and their purpose in life.
In this podcast, we share the methods, skills, and solutions that helped us, our students, and now hopefully you move forward.
Let's explore transformation together.
Today's topic is journaling. Very important topic if you want to move forward in the internal arts. And today's podcast and the upcoming podcasts are all inspired by 2 live workshops we're going to do in the summer, in July and August. And we sort of distilled topics that we thought, normally we don't really talk about these things, but we're obviously going to teach in these courses and in these trainings. So today's topic is journaling. And a wise man once said to me is like, journaling is like the door between you and your subconscious. So if you want to make some change in yourself, of course, we need our subconscious to work for us and not against us unconsciously, right? So we're talking about journaling in different forms because there's different types of journaling. So Didi, the first thing you do when someone wants like a food advice, right?
Yeah.
About 5 elements food is journaling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is an eye opener for most. Because when you ask someone like, "Oh, write down what you eat," just that exercise is already something.
Yeah.
Just write down what you eat. But then I also ask, okay, how did you, where did you eat it? What were you doing while eating it? And then how did you feel afterwards?
Right.
And then I have more questions about, like, how was your sleep and exercise and stuff. But just the things like, okay, write down what you eat is for some people quite confronting.
Absolutely. That's it. Because you ask them to do that for at least 2 weeks, right? Because that will give an honest insight for the person and for you yourself, if you're helping a person to see. Because then in that way, you can sort of see like, so what's the cause? What's the effect?
Yeah.
But you see, for a lot of people, it's so confronting that actually some people don't do it. They don't even go through these 2 weeks, right?
Yeah. And so especially if your relationship with food is kind of not so good, then it's writing it down just makes it as something that is true. And it kind of, and I need to share this. So what I see people do, and of course, it's not for me. Nobody does it for me. It's for yourself.
Absolutely, yeah.
But what you see is you discover patterns in your life. Food is something that you do during your life. Every day you eat, or most people do. They eat, they drink, and so what you see is that it relates a lot to your daily patterns. For sure.
Yeah. It's like your life is almost built around, let's say, your sleep and your meals, right?
Yeah. And what you do in between. But it's something that is there all the time. So making a food journal for yourself it's gonna show you your daily patterns. And what I hear a lot of people say when they do it, when they actually get through it, that writing it down stops them even taking the food because they don't want to write it down.
Oh, you see that a lot, right? So they're writing down, I ate chocolate, next day chocolate, and they're like, I cannot eat this chocolate anymore. But how do you deal with that? Because some people are already changing, you could say, in these 2 weeks. They're like, I cannot eat this. But are you like, but give me an honest thing? Or are you sort of supportive of that?
It's all good.
Yeah,
it's all good.
I guess so,
It's part of the process. So I don't mind whatever works for the person. So some people are like, no, I just want to have an honest look on my
Diet as it is,
as
right?
it is.
Yeah.
And then it's also good because then they can see what it does for their sleep, for their stool, for their energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can see. Oh, you can see so many things.
Their emotions, how they feel during the weeks, and
and of course that's something about, especially about food. It changes your energy. It's like
it's the absolute foundation.
So to be very aware. And especially if you know a little bit, that's why we combine so well in daily life, but also in our trainings, is that when you get aware of your energy, you can change it by exercises that we do, but you can also change your energy. It does change anyway by the food that you eat, but to be very aware of it, which you get when you write it down.
How powerful is that, right? You grab a pen, you start writing down, and now suddenly people are already making changes, right?
Yeah.
But if you do not write it down, your unconscious behavior is just has room to go. So I mean, that's what is it, right? You have a pen, you have a piece of paper, you start writing or filling in this form, and then this change happens, right? So your subconscious is sort of,
it's kind of channeling through.
Absolutely,
and it's also, where do you put focus on?
Yeah.
So if you write it down, you put focus on these things.
Absolutely.
And especially with food, a lot of people just very unconsciously eat whatever is put in front of them, or they get this hungry feeling and they go into a shop and they buy whatever they see, and there are a lot of unconscious patterns there if you don't focus on it.
And it doesn't matter which supermarket you go into, these people have thought about how you feel as a customer when you come in, especially if you're unconscious and hungry, right? So it takes a while for people, if they start writing it down. Now there's a chance that they say, okay, I'm going into the store and I know what I'm going to get, because I know, and you're sort of, that's what happens when I go into a store now. Is where you're so zoned into what you actually want to buy, because you know that's good for you, because you had that experience, that all this, this marketing around you, screaming for your attention is sort of, it's sort of blocked, right?
Yeah. And another thing with food, and especially when you go into the supermarket, I studied marketing, so I know a lot about how it works. There is a lot of emotion around food. So when you go in and in your mind, all these commercials still kind of go. And you see these beautiful people eating this lovely food, and you kind of want to be part of that. You want to feel the way they do. Well, they probably don't eat the stuff that they sell. But the thing is, that's the emotion that you get from commercials and going into a supermarket. But now you want to be honest with yourself. So writing it down gives you an honest view on, but what does it do? Yeah,
what does it do? And what do I actually need to get back into balance, right?
Yeah.
If that's your aim.
Yeah.
Because you have to know what you want.
Absolutely.
And what your goal is to do that.
Yeah. And that's again, starting journaling. And of course, Qigong and food is a part of Qigong, and it's a system. Yeah. We do have a step-by-step system that you go through, and by journaling and understanding your energy, it's so much easier to go through it than
for sure. So in Qigong as well, right? We have maybe a little bit of a different way of journaling. It's not like, okay, we're doing these 2 weeks and then, we have a sort of, it's also about journaling your experiences, right? So what I've done is that with every exercise I do, let's say we're awakening the energy body, right? The first time, and you do this exercise, and you have a certain sensation that you feel. It's like, wow, there's a feeling there that I sort of never experienced before. After the session, I would write that down, right? I would write the date and then in practice. Also, like, so how did the practice go? It's more like not giving it a sort of a value in sense like, oh, was it a 10 or a 1? But more like, okay, so how was my concentration? How did I feel? Because that can also relate back to, sleep, food, whatever. That gives you insight, more like an energy log. But more importantly for that is that you write down the experience that you have. So like I have this tingling sensation, I would write down, tingling sensation. Yeah. So next day, when I start and I look back at the day before, it's like, where was I yesterday? And I raise my hands and I'm going like, oh yeah, tingling sensations is like, bang. It's right there. Because now you know where to go, right? It's like this specific frequency is there for you. Yeah. And step by step, more frequencies will sort of, come up and you will be like, oh, I feel this, I feel that, until you feel like, oh, I've got this. Yeah. I really got this, right? It's not vague anymore. It's part of me. It's who I am. And I know how to get there immediately. Absolutely. And that, of course, speeds up the process because it is a process. Yeah. So for every experience, also with partner training, it's like, can I feel this person's roots? And I mean, my teacher had us write this down, right? Like 10 times. It's like, I can feel everyone's root. I can feel everyone's root. I can feel everyone's root. And then we were done and he was like, oh, you're actually doing it, right? He was laughing about it. But it's sort of... It gets into your subconscious at a certain point.
It's kind of ingrained in you when you write it down.
Totally. You write it down and you write it down in yourself, write it down into the experience. And then, wow, the magic can happen because you're really growing step by step. So for a lot of our students, when they're getting into this, into this process, you could say, is they sometimes are like, man, we're like 5 weeks in and now everything's changed, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel though, for certain people, it's hard to do. They sometimes have, so I advise them, right? And I think for some people, it's quite a challenge to do it, to remind themselves to do it and get into this habit. Yeah. And then I also say, it's like, okay, be gentle with yourself. Yeah. It's not something you want to force upon someone, but when time's ready, they will get it at a certain point.
Well, I think you tip on a very beautiful subject as well. Writing it down doesn't say anything. It's part of a journey. And being somewhere doesn't mean you don't have to judge yourself that you're... so there is a mental aspect. Mm-hmm. That's probably why...
A judgmental aspect.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what I see, why sometimes people can't get through even a day of journaling is because, they feel so bad about themselves. Yeah. About what they do, what they eat, and... So you need this kind of a mental training as well to kind of step aside and say, okay, I'm just going to write it down. And it's okay. It's okay that I'm here because it's a journey. And to really focus on what I'm doing at this moment can help me to see where I want to move towards.
There's a lot of emotion around it, right?
So much.
And also with training, I think, is a lot of people are like, okay, so maybe I haven't been training for 2 days and I'm going to journal and I'm fooling myself. Who am I kidding? This whole reactivity and judgment that comes around it. I think that's spot on, Didi, what you're saying there. It's like, But that's a lesson in itself, right? That people, because if you want to change, it's on one hand you need discipline, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you also have to be soft in a certain way, and kindness towards yourself to explore, because every time you train, it adds up, right? But for some people, it's all or nothing, right? But there's so much gray in between, where it's just fine that if you keep moving forward step by step. So this is maybe is one of the most important topics, because judgment and releasing the judgment. I mean, that's a podcast in itself, and I guess we could do one about that, because I think we all have experience with that, right?
Sure.
It's a very important topic to move beyond. But there's so much in there. If you grab a pen and you have a piece of paper and you start writing, that's very real.
Yeah.
That's very in the moment. There's something really magical happening at that.
Absolutely. And there is another thing that I want to look at, is that we all live in a way in the moment. Yeah. So you're here in the now, and you can go back a little bit back, but you can't really, most of the time we can't really grasp what we felt maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, but a year ago. It's very hard to go back to 2 years ago and really feel what you felt at that moment. But when you've journaled for a long time and you go back and then you see, wow, I made this progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about that, that's really important, right? So I think for my own personal growth, it's sort of, so there's a couple of questions, right, around Qigong. It's like, why am I training this? What is this? What is this method? What is this method supporting? What is it actually I'm looking for?
Yeah.
Right. So for me, it all started with being able to enter the now and becoming more and more present as a human being, and that whole concept that resonated so deeply with me. So that when I started the process and I started journaling my experiences, so not just only the frequencies, etc., but also how was my experience at this moment, that every time I hit a certain frequency that was new and it was sort of like, whoa, there's something really definitely changing now, I would grab like a red marker and put a bracket around it, right? Yeah. Like, okay, man, this, if you ever scroll back a little bit longer, you will see these brackets. Yeah. So at a certain point I was discovering is that what I put in these brackets became simpler and simpler and was sort of repeating itself. So I'm like, wow, so now I'm actually sort of creating my own almost manual, my own pathway towards my goal, right? Yeah. It's sort of you're teaching it yourself because you're having this experience. If I would not have written that down, we are weird. It's like what you're saying, right? One day you feel like this, 2 weeks later you feel like that. And also what's like a truth at a certain point, maybe 2 weeks later you're like, yeah, but that's not it. It's like this, right? But if you would not write it down,
no, you don't know.
You don't know. Yeah. But now it's like, oh, there's such a profound, feeling coming when you read these things back. You're like, whoa, I had that experience. And maybe you sidetracked for a little while. Yeah. And you come back to it again. And you're like, oh, but this is it. This is it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So I had this experience of like, how is it feeling in my eyes? Or how is my body posture? Or, but now it's more like, oh, yeah, I have the eyes of a hawk now. Or I feel this contracting energy and whatever, right? Yeah. All these things that I would write down, they come back. And then it becomes simpler and simpler and simpler. And then it's just sort of ingrained in your daily thing. Yeah. And I mean, people who just write a diary daily, and some of you who are listening are probably doing that. That already has a profound effect, right? Because you sort of, it's such a beautiful method to change and transformation. Yeah. But doing it in this way, it will just speed up your progress. Yeah. But someone said to me, it's also you're sort of writing your pathway to God, and this sounds almost. This is of course a hermetic thing, you could say, and this is not about. This is more about your personal God, I guess. but it's looking for your higher self in a higher thing. So if you start writing, you write yourself towards that point.
Yeah.
Right? You're moving towards it.
Yeah.
And whatever that means. But you feel there's something higher I can achieve with myself. And you write it, and you write your own method, you could say.
Yeah.
Well, imagine how that helps teaching people.
Yeah.
Right? If you have these things, the things you can discover on your own, well, not on your own. Of course, I have my teachers and everything, but the things you discover as your own truths at a certain point can help other people in an amazing way. It can save them years because you're like, oh, no, this not, that, what, this yes, this no, and then there you go. Yeah.
And something to add up to that. I always say to my students, don't believe what I say. Experience it yourself.
Yeah.
So what can be true for me can maybe not work for you. Try it and write it down and see what it does to you.
Absolutely.
So nobody can tell you what's the best diet for you. It's something you need to discover.
Right.
And how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
Is by just trying it out, writing it down, and then discover what works for you.
Yeah, it's an experience.
Yeah.
And that sums it up, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Because you're writing it down.
Yeah.
And now it becomes real, right?
Yeah.
Now it's your truth because it's in the experience.
Yeah.
You write down your experiences. Nothing more.
No. And then you see, as we're all living in cycles, we're all with seasons and cycles and your own cycle through life. It's an ever-changing journey, an ever-changing experience. So
for sure, but some things become very solid.
Absolutely.
In your experience, right?
Yeah.
Because your experience of life will change.
Yeah, and what I experienced myself, it's so much easier. It starts to become so much easier to really feel because you focus on it, and then because you want to write down what it feels for you, you're going to start to focus on, oh, okay. For example, and I write down on many aspects of my life, but okay, I'm going to eat something. Okay, how does it feel in my mouth? But then how does it feel into my system?
Yeah.
On just the physical body, but also on the energy body. And how does it change my emotions?
Yeah. All these levels,
all
right?
These levels. And it starts to become so strong that I can predict how it's gonna feel, or even by going into a store, by just touching the food or touching something like I just see an orange in in the kitchen. So by just touching the orange, I can feel, does this do good to me?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And sometimes I put something away because I think, no, it's not. It's not for me.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing, because you had the experience, you've written it down. Now your whole approach to it has changed.
Yeah.
You're gonna take much better care of yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And because that's gonna support how you feel and how you move through life. And it's just a process of sharpening the sword day by day by day until it feels like, wow, this sword is sharp now. Right, and I'm well on my way. I'm well on every level, and
it's an easy tool. It's easy. I mean, it's so powerful, but it's very easy. You can start every day.
Yeah.
If you don't do it for a while, it's easy to go back to.
Yeah.
And it's very powerful, and it's just for you.
Absolutely.
So
as long as you just no judgment around it.
Yeah.
Right? If you feel any judgment coming up, just observe that, observe the feeling in yourself. And then it's like, okay, it's fine. Just let it be there, but do not let it stand in your way. right? Just put it aside and say, okay, this judgment is around this, and then write it down anyway, and you feel so much better.
Yeah.
And well, people, I hope this helps.
Yeah, that
It
was
helped us for
powerful.
sure. So, yeah.
Powerful to just talk about it.
Oh, for sure, yeah. So if you want to know a little bit more about our workshops, we'll put that down here in the description.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was it.
that was it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Okay. Bye.